Get ready to laugh your socks off. Or not, we don't care. It's a couple of laughs with Carrie Louise, seen on Showtime and Comedy Central. And her husband from The Tonight Show and runner-up on America's Got Talent, Tom Cotter. Buckle up, because this married for too long couple is ready to distract you from reality. Please welcome Carrie Louise and Tom Cotter.
Hey, we have a great show for you tonight. We have a special guest. Yes, we're doing a little different this time. No, we're not having a comic. No, not for a guest. This time we're having a club owner and comedy booker. So we're going to get an interesting view of things behind the scenes. So we can't wait to hear from him tonight. But first, we got to introduce our producer of the show, Harry Cotter.
Hey, good to be back. Episode 26, everybody.
Wow.
We're not. I know, it's flying by. Quick reminder, we are live on Spotify. Check us out if you can't watch us live or you missed any past episodes. You can still watch it and listen to it. So please tune into that. And yeah, we do have a special show. This is a pre-recorded show. So we are not currently live, but we're still going to be behind the scenes right now as you're watching. So keep chiming in and we will post your comments and yeah, enjoy the rest of the show. Where are you two this weekend?
This weekend, I will be at the Environmental Learning Center in Bristol, Connecticut. That's a charity kind of thing, and it'll be a lot of fun. So there you have it. Carrie, where are you going to be?
Friday night, I'm performing at Soul Joel's Comedy Club in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. Nothing says you've made it in comedy like Pottstown, Pennsylvania, comedy capital of the world. No, all kidding aside, I'm really excited about it. It should be a good show. But I'm really excited about our guest. So let's introduce him. It's not the typical comedian that we've been having on the show. No, he's a very well-known booker and club owner of many clubs around the country, but mostly in the Boston area, where he was a councilman for many years. And Tom and I first met him on the comedy scene many, many moons ago when he was a doorman working for Dick Doherty. He's come a long way since then, and we can't wait to hear about it. So please welcome to the show, John Tobin, everybody.
Hey, what's up, Carrie? Hi, Tom. Hi, Harry.
Woo! Welcome.
Thanks for being here, sir.
It's good to be here. Nice to see you all.
Now, more than just a booker and a club owner, club booker kind of guy, also a graduate of Catholic Memorial, which is, if you're from Boston, that's you can puff out your chest a little bit on that. Boston City Councilman. Were you not partners with Jim McHugh and the Boston Comedy Festival, or
I did. I started the festival with Jim, and it became an idea like in 1999. He used to do that alternative festival up in Montreal, the Boston Tea Party.
Right.
Didn't really ingratiate ourselves to the fine people of Montreal, particularly the organizers. So. He came up with the idea, let's do this Boston Comedy Festival. So, yeah, we started, I think the first one was 2000. It was, because this is his 25th year this year. So wow. I got elected, and after about 4 or 5 years, I sold out my half to Jim, and he's taken the ball and run with it for the last 20 years. God bless him. And
you've taken the ball and running with your own world, right? Can I list off these, honey? So, right now, you book, well, these are your regular rooms. Laugh Boston, which is an A room, spectacular room. The Cabot, another great venue. The Comedy Scene. Roar, which is out at the casino out there in Springfield.
Yep.
Those are every single week. But then you also you produce a ton of shows, just some of them. The District Comedy Series, the Chuck, Dedham Community Theater, great little theater, by the way. Cape Cod Melody Tent, that's huge during the summer. Norwood Theater. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How did you become this mighty oak tree from this little acorn of comedy?
I don't know. It was just never really the intention to do it. When your introductions, you started off. At my comedy career, I mean, we could write a book about Dick Doherty. We could all include 15 different chapters from.
Yes, we could.
I always said I was going to write I had to wait for Dick to pass away till I could write the book about him. Now he's been gone for 2 years, so I'm on the clock. But I will say this: despite it all, I mean, he did give me my start. I mean, I was working at a radio station. I wanted to be a broadcaster in the worst way. I used to listen to AM radio when I was 6. So I wanted to be on the radio. I wanted to be mayor of Boston. And but I loved comedy. I'd watch MASH and F Troop and all those, crazy, silly shows. My father, and then the Gong Show and things like that, and Candid Camera, and so I loved comedy. And my first time I ever went to see a comedy show live was at Nick's Comedy Stop when I was 17, when I was a junior at CM, and it was Kevin Knox, DJ Hazard, Don Gavin, and then
Jesus.
Steve came in off the street to do a surprise guest. And
Steve Sweeney came in off the streets. That is
because there was 6 clubs in the area at that time, so everybody's probably doing 7 or 8 shows a night, and so we walked back to our car. My friend Gary Diamede and his brother Peter. I'll never forget. It changed my life. It just kind of like to see something like that live for the first time was just outside of the first time I saw a live performance, outside of seeing like a junior high musical or something. So
Jesus, what a lineup. That was an epic lineup. You can't ask for a better baptism in comedy than seeing that show. And I'm so glad they were checking IDs because you were 17 going to.
They weren't very stringent on that at Nick's. They weren't stringent about any rules, to be quite blunt, but
true that.
So. But it turns out Don Gavin, he is my favorite of all time.
Mine too.
Don went to Catholic Memorial, class 65, and he grew up, and I grew up on the same street as Don, Manthon Road in West Roxbury. So I just had a kinship to him when I didn't know him, and I just saw him live, and oh my goodness. So, but I ended up getting a job in a radio station, a couple years later. I went to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. The Connecticut School of Broadcasting, 2 great locations. Well, yeah, I got the certificate program. They told me I was pretty good, but my accent, I wouldn't get a job outside of Dorchester. So, so Hank got me a gig doing an AM station in the back of Kiss 108 when it was on the Fellsway. And so, at the time, Kiss 108 is the bigged billing station in the country.
Right.
The Kiss concert, it was huge. Matty Siegel,
Maddie
Sonny Joe
Moore,
Wright, Dale Dorman, Lisa Lips, Ed McMahon, Kid David. It was great. Lady D, Diana Steele. It was like parachuting into your radio.
Yeah.
But I'd have to work midnight to 8 or 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And you play the music coming off satellite, the big band music. And believe me, if you've heard one big band song, you've heard them all. And so by 1:30, I'd be face down to the control booth with drool coming over the thing. The commercials weren't getting played, but I'd have to open the guests. I'd have to open the door for the guests for Maddie's show. Maddie's show would start at 6 o'clock. Maddie wouldn't show up till 6:45.
Right.
And they played music and everything else. Billy Costa ran the show, and Maddie pull up right up front. Parked his Mercedes. I have to go open the door for him, but then his guests. And one of the guests one day was Dick Doherty. And
wow.
Dick had battled his demons in the in the 80s and recovered and was opening his own comedy clubs. And my parents used to go see Dick when they were first dating and first married. And so I just introduced myself to him. And he said, I'm opening a club. How would you like to work in it? And I said, yes. And so it was Light Ships, which is next to the milk bottle.
Yeah, that's where I first met you, I believe.
Yeah, it's the first time we met. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize, it took me 2 weeks to realize I was on a boat. Because I wasn't really, some days I'd walk down into work and then I'd walk up out of work and I'm like, oh, we're on a boat. We're actually in the water. And so I didn't really catch on. I wasn't a quick learner back then. It was a simpler time, Of course, there was a 50-50 chance whether your car was still going to be outside in that area. Right. And then about a month in, Dick calls me up. He says, how would you like to host the show? And I said, I'm not a comedian. He said, I just need you to bring up the first guest, the first act. And then in between the second and third acts, talk about the dinner and show packages. So I never forget my first day hosting a show. I went out and bought like a light blue blazer. This was all at Marshall's, where back in the day, Marshall's wasn't. John Gavin, Marshall's, even the mannequins are irregular. And so I had in a suit, a shirt and tie that came in the same package. And I had it on with, so I get on, it's time to get on. And I'm like, oh my God, I was petrified. And my mother and father were there. I had 2 sets of aunts and uncles there. And I get on the stage. I said, how's everybody doing? I'm holding onto the back curtain. with one hand and holding up the microphone this hand. And
Your parent? Can I just ask? Your parents were there just to see you.
they would see me
introduce the first act.
Yes,
And then
Very supportive.
Talk about the menu in between.
Yeah, and so I get up, but the first thing I hear from
too, they were there.
what's
You
that?
You had aunts and
yeah,
uncles too. You had the whole.
I
family.
did. To my left, I heard one guy in the crowd. It's all dark in the audience. I hear one guy in the crowd say, "Isn't this the guy who just sat us?" He's petrified. And then I hear from my Aunt Mary, "Isn't he adorable?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta love Aunt Mary.
Oh,
I
my
love
God, that's
seeing
crazy.
you there, though. You were such a friendly face every time, because Dick Doherty is such a me. Hey, Kerry, you gotta do 5 minutes. Don't go over. You go over, you'll never work for me again. You'll be blackballed in this whole town. You were such a nice light to, and I'm like,
The
oh,
yin to him.
here.
Yeah, exactly. Because he was so abrasive and harsh.
He'd
and
make
you
the
were so-
comics. He'd make the comics help see people. Like the first couple of weeks I'm there, I'm like, who are these guys? I guess and then I'm introducing them on stage, and I'm like, this even if it didn't seem right that someone was going to go on stage is seating people. This just seems like, and so I just say to the comics, I can handle it, but he'd find out, and then he'd rip you to shreds on the Monday. And Dane Cook started showing up, and Dane would just light the place on fire. Like people started showing up on Thursday and paying money to see Dane.
Yeah.
Dane would call me on his. He was the first comedian I knew who had a car phone. He'd do a couple of shows in Boston, say, "You got room for me?" And I'd put him on, and he'd just light the place on fire. And then Dick would call me, "You put Dane Cook on?" I said, "Dick, there's people paying money to see him. He's going to learn his place."
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, he
This
was
is
all about
Dick-
that.
I have warm and fuzzy feelings about Dick Doherty, especially post-mortem. I know that, he made people set up tables and chairs, but he was good to my wife. He was good to me. He was pretty good to you, I think. So he helped a
He
lot
gave
of
me
people along. So
he gave me my
God
start.
rest his soul. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Same thing.
I went to his memorial service. He died in May, but his memorial service wasn't until a Saturday, Labor Day weekend at 1 p.m. And I said, "Geez, even in passing, it's a bad booking."
Yeah. Okay.
I remember when his dad died, and I went to that. I was brand new in comedy. I went to the funeral, drove up from Providence, and I went into the funeral home, and I'm there with, I think I was with Kevin Knox and somebody else at the time, Greg Fitzsimmons. And I went over to Dick, and I hadn't even started working for Dick yet, but I knew he's a legend. And I went up and I said, "Mr. Doherty, I'm really sorry that you lost your father." And he said, "I didn't lose him. He's right over there in the casket." And I thought, oh my God, how irreverent that is, but how funny. And that was my first introduction to Dick Doherty. And, I still feel great things about Dick. He was good to a lot of us.
And the next week in that funeral home, he opened up a club.
You had to set
That's
up
how
the
Dick
coffin.
was. He had so many clubs.
I just had a couple questions about comedians you've ever booked. If you don't want to say any names, you don't have to. But is anyone ever completely different off stage than they are on stage, and in the way that maybe they're super funny and great on stage, but horrible personalities off stage? Or
Yeah, there's been a few horrible personalities, but there's been people like that just are completely different. There's an on-off button, right? You go on, it's an act. It's just you go on stage, and it's sort of like, I think it's just so funny. Like when you see people, you might have a comedian introduce them to somebody outside of a comedy club setting, and you say, "Well, this is Bill. He's a comic." "Oh, well, you don't seem too funny. You don't seem too funny." It's like, what? It's just an act. Then the comic will walk away, and the person say, "So what do they do for work?" I'm like, "They're a comedian. That's what they do. That's their job. That's how they pay their rent or their mortgage or raise their families." So yeah, there's been a handful of comics that we just choose not to work with because they just behavior off stage or how they treat staff is just not acceptable. For me, that's the bottom line. It's just how you treat the people, the staff at the place. I just say there's something for everybody's taste. When I remember when we were opening up Laugh Boston in 2013, there was an anonymous comic. Boston Globe magazine did a big spread on, because everybody was watching this, and they did a big spread on us, the people opening it. And one of the comics was anonymous. I wish they said their name, but I'm glad they said it. They said, "We're just worried John Tobin's favorite comic is his older brother's favorite comic." in other words, he's not seeing this other generation, these other people behind them. And it taught me a lesson that if I just booked the club for my sensibilities and my likes, that we're probably not going to be open too long. There's a whole universe of people out there that I will admit, when we have a 22-year-old TikToker and they're putting rear ends of the seats on a Tuesday night, 300 people, and I'm sitting there from the alley, and I'm like, there's people falling out of the seats laughing, and I'm like, I don't really get it. But it's not for me to really get,
it's supply and demand, sir. You got to, give them what they want.
Right. Well, we kind of experienced that back in the day, and I'm sure you have too. You probably seated their crowd was when they had the soap opera stars come in, and they packed the show, and all they wanted was a picture and a signed black and white headshot.
Every soap opera show is the same. They come out and it's some handsome guy. I almost got in a fight with this guy Sean Cannon one time because Dick shorted him money and he refused to leave the Grill 93 one night at like 1 a.m. I said, I got to go home. He was like holding me hostage for his check. I said, I have nothing to do with this, And so there was a TikTok person up on a Tuesday night years ago up on stage. There 300 people there and had a pretty well-known Boston comic. They said they were we're having a drink together, and says, I'm funnier than they are. I said, I know you are. I said, well, why can't I be up there? I said, well, you are here a lot. I said, but it's Tuesday night. I said, if you tell me you can bring 300 people in and I don't have to put you up and fly you in and stuff like that, and you're here, I said, gladly, I'll put you up there every Tuesday night. I said, but it's a funny thing called a lease, and, they get really sticky about it the first of the month,
Yeah, and that's why you're so successful, because you learn to juggle all that and change with the times. Speaking of that too, now like all these comedians, they're getting canceled. We cancel culture. Have you seen the audience get a little bit more sensitive than the past?
Oh yeah, I mean, but we do video on most of our ads, so you get a good idea of what you're walking into. But I think a lot of times, like the days of like walking by a club saying, let's go check it out, that crowd is minimized. It's more people going for a targeted person, particularly all the social media out there about people. But I always tell people, some people say, is it going to be funny? Or, do you think I'd like it? And I'm like, I like when people they say, yeah, I got to get into your club. Can you let me know when someone good's coming in? I'm like, yeah, we don't have anybody good coming till August, so I'll give you a buzz. Who do you think I would think be funny? I said, I couldn't sleep last night. I was wondering who I was thinking you might think was funny. But I think the cancel culture thing is like, to me, it's let the public make up their mind. We make up our mind in elections, and we make up. If you don't want to come to a comedy club to see a particular act, don't come. Don't come.
It's such an easy formula.
We're happy if you're going to get offended. We're happy not to have you, and it's just sort of like, just don't show up. There's plenty of other things to do. I'm not a big soccer fan. I have nothing against it. It's a worldwide phenomenon. I get it. I don't criticize it. I don't go on Facebook and say this is silly. Why don't they use their hands and and stuff like that. I just don't go.
Right, but there are people that still go. And do you tend to be on the side of the comic when if any argument comes across or someone calls and complains? Do you usually stand by the comic, or is the customer always right, or how do you?
That's a good question. That? Yeah, that's tough. Yeah.
I'm generally always on the side of the comic. I mean, the question, the old mantra about the
customer's always right.
Yeah.
Well, not always. Things in clubs and people behaving the way they do sometimes. And so I'm generally on the side of the comedian. It's going to be really egregious or whatever, but
there are some comics that are shock comics that go out of their way to make you very uncomfortable. And that again, to your earlier point, there are videos you show before the show when you promote the show. Now it's caveat emptor. Buyer beware. Now you know where you're getting.
Beware. There's one well-known comic who got into trouble several years ago. Was never arrested, was never charged with a crime, but was put on the bench for, the public opinion bench for a couple of years. And then they were coming back to Boston, just played a big theater, and someone called me and said he shouldn't be allowed to do that. I said, says who? And they said, that shouldn't be allowed. I said, why? I said, here's the thing. There's 2,000 seats of the place. If nobody shows up, he'll never be back.
Right.
Yeah.
I said, but there's going to be 2,000 people there. 5
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
5 times.
He'll be back.
Can I switch gears here? You run a very efficient ship. I love getting your the weekly rundown of everything. You guys, your marketing's great. Your promotion's great. Is Ryan still with you? Ryan Cott?
Yeah, Ryan Cutt's still with me.
Who's just 2 letters short of a Cotter. So I love that guy. I've always loved him.
I love Ryan. I thank God for Ryan because he's been,
great. You need a good lieutenant, and he's been great for you for years.
He's done an amazing thing with his life, and he started off with a connection as a kid.
Yeah,
and he was like driving like the biggest acts in the country around, to all their gigs and stuff like that, and get cut out. Ryan is happy to say he's engaged to be married. He's getting married in July, and I'm officiating the wedding.
Oh my goodness, that's great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who's the guy? Well, that did not come out of edit that out, honey. I was just kidding.
It's just great. Tom, I remember that just the first time meeting you from Rhode Island, and just kind of that just kind of rat-a-tat misdirection. And then Carrie, you came up at a time in Boston when there was a dearth of female comics in the city. I think at the time it was Julie Barr. I don't know that even Patty Ross had even emerged yet. Christine Hurley certainly hadn't come on the scene yet, but till years later. And you were really like in a man's game there, particularly at that time.
Absolutely.
women and people of color in the city had to leave to come back home. I think about Wendy Liebman, for instance, and it was you almost had to find success in Des Moines first before you could come back here. So I give you
Boston's a tough shop, boy. It's a tough shop to work in, and especially if from out of the Boston area. It's a tough nut to crack, really.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And it's
like
still sort of a boys' town, I think.
Yeah, it's we're trying to change that and try and make sure that our lineups are just kind of really representative of the city. The city's changed a lot, and you gotta be sensitive to that. And funny's still funny.
Yeah.
But I think but funny rules the day. But it's got to be there's a balance to it, and we try to achieve that. So I give you a lot of credit for doing what you did at that time.
Well, Mutual Admiration Society, Carrie and I marvel at how you went from, this guy who was basically seating people at Dick Doherty's first room to where you are now. It's, you're definitely just such a successful round. And I know it's going to continue to grow for you.
Yeah. So I remember, Tom and Karen, if you remember this, but when John Lincoln, I think, had the room down Cape Cod at that hotel, and I went to go see you guys. I missed you, Tom, because I went down to go see you, Tom. You were in the room back minding the twins. While Carrie was like literally 9 months pregnant up on stage, doing a set at 9 months pregnant. So I watched your set and then hung out, then went back and forth and hung out in the hotel rooms, and they had you guys had the twins, and just the things that you guys did to make your careers work at the same time, spending time with your boys and raise your families.
Oh wow, those were tough days. God, that's a memory, John. Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we marvel at your family. You're such a family guy, and your kids are great. We love your Christmas card every year. So well done. Mazel tov on that again. And also, please extend our warm regards to your bride and to Ryan for his pending nuptials. That's great.
Yes,
well, we're all lucky to have beautiful. Both lucky to have beautiful, healthy boys. So that's all you can ask for.
Exactly.
Yeah, and congrats to your son. Almost done with his first year at Northeastern. So that's huge too.
Yeah,
he's pretty excited.
It's one of the toughest schools to get into in the world now, let alone the country. Northeastern is a beast.
7% acceptance rate. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah,
it's insane.
Yeah. Good for him.
So, thanks so much for coming on, John. Really appreciate it.
All right, Harry. Nice to meet you. Tom, nice to see you. And tell Mr. Lee I said hello. And bye, Carrie.
All right, we'll see you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
And I'll leave you to say goodnight.
It was so great to reconnect with John. What a great dude. Well, that's it for us. Say goodnight, Carrie.
Good night, Carrie.
Well, folks, that's a wrap. Remember, life is like a comedy show. Sometimes you bomb, sometimes you shine. but you always blame your spouse on how they deliver the punchline. If you need to get in touch with us, email us at info.coupleoflaughs@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in. Keep laughing, because you never know. That could save your marriage. Good night. See you next time.